that everybody could see on the news. And whenever they started trying to put these regulations in, they could say, well, we need to do it because look what happened with D.B. Cooper over here. He was able to steal $200,000 and jump out of an airplane with it, you know?
Okay.
So, and why I'm bringing all that up is that's what I'm thinking about when it comes to these hackings, these supposed hackings that took place in the 1970s and the 1980s. I believe that these were all they were staged so that they could use them as examples in order to put freaking stronger regulations on the internet. And I really do believe that.
When was the first UK internet related? I suppose you could say the Communications Act of 94. I think was the first version, First Amendment. You had some malicious communication at both the UK and the US dating back to 87, maybe a bit earlier.
Now, I know that was when I wanted to mention something that I'm glad in a way, that we did this over because, well, before I get on to it, let me kind of put where I'm going with all this.
Okay.
Now, when I was growing up, I remember that they were really pushing it on television and movies, how kids were running around and hacking into freaking bank ATMs and shit with these little devices and stealing money out of ATMs and running amok and everything. You know what I mean? They were just horrible teenagers and stuff. And they had freaking movies come out like War Games. You know what I mean? Where this kid accidentally hacks into the freaking government's freaking nuclear freaking program and gets a supercomputer to freaking play a game that's gonna release nuclear weapons. You know?
It's fictional.
Well, I mean, that I don't think that stuff was actually freaking just somebody coming up with an idea. I think that this stuff was being paid for by the government so that freaking they could push this agenda to where people think that this stuff was actually real and it was actually happening. Okay, because there was a lot of it. Okay, I remember episodes of like Simon and Simon where freaking they brought it up. They came out with a TV series called The Whiz Kid, where he was,
yeah, you showed me a few clips in the past.
You know,
Yeah.
So they were really pushing it, and I did research on it, and I found out that like in the 1970s there were very few arrests at all when it comes to hacking. Computer hacking was like still in its infancy. And it's like most of them were like freaking tech hobbyists, engineers, maybe some students, and that was it. You know, and it was like what you said. That, you know, back then, like the word hacking was actually just another word for that meant like tinkering. You know, or tinkering or pushing systems to their limits.
Yeah.
Now, this is where we got into MIT the last time. Do you remember the Model Railroad Club?
Well, Model Railway Club was in Hornby.
Out of MIT, Tech Model.
Okay. Yeah, I'm aware of it. Yeah.
Now, MIT's Tech Model Railroad Club, they came out with like the early version of phone phreaking. Okay, and that's where it comes in with like tinkering around with things. Like I remember I used to know how to take a freaking paper clip and I used to wrap it around my freaking pointing finger, and if I wrapped it around right and I hooked it at a straight hook, I could take and put that inside of the key area of a freaking payphone, and I could jiggle it,
Huh.
and I could actually get free phone calls.
um, owning up to a crime. um, um, I have come across some extremely good 70s sort of how to modify radio and books, and I've actually come across a 1950s. Back in the 50s, especially in the US, it was quite common for young boys mainly to play on the crystal radio sets and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a big sort of movement in the 50s, and when it got to the 70s and early 80s, yeah, there was a big movement in modifying stuff. And how to it goes back to the World War II thing of trying to keep your machines running for as long as possible, rather than today's concept of just throw away equipment.
Well, I mean, the thing of it was, is like, it was really, the arrests were actually, not very freaking frequent. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but again, it's white collar crime, and it was done by very few people because of they didn't have the resources.
Well, I mean, back in the '70s, this is where I bring up Captain Crunch. Now, a lot of people don't know him. I actually mentioned it to you guys in the first attempt to do this, and you guys thought I was talking about the cereal guy. So
Okay, I
yeah, but Captain Crunch, his real name was John Draper. Now, what he did is he actually got arrested because he got arrested for phone freaking, and what did is he used a toy whistle to make free calls. He would mimic
yeah,
the AT&T tones with
good.
an actual toy
DTMF,
whistle. Yeah,
DTMF.
yeah, he would mimic the freaking phone AT&T tones, and it would give him a free call. You know, so that right there is, and that was one of the most freaking prominent ones. That was the biggest, one of the biggest ones they could come up with back in the '70s. Um, then they said that the most recognizable arrests started happening in the early 1980s, and that
Yeah,
was
when
because that was with the rise
well,
of.
that's because of the 8-bit machines being computers being popular, and modems slowly becoming popular, with restrictions on shared phone lines.
Mhm. And they started becoming
You,
more. They became more common, and like the last time we tried to do this, I brought up 414s, um, the 414s, which was a group of teenagers out of Milwaukee. But before I do that, I need to bring up the most infamous hacking incident that happened ever, especially when it comes to the 1980s.
ever.
Yeah, ever, dude, ever.
Okay.
And see, I should have remembered this one because this is probably the most famous hack job that was ever done, and that was when Max Headroom took over freaking WGN
Okay. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Chicago. Okay, and I mean, we've had this conversation at least 3 times, and at least, and I don't understand why I freaking forgot it. And then after we did that show the last time, I was sitting
Mm.
on the back porch, smoking my cigarette, and I freaking said, "Dude, just Max Headroom popped into my head." I was like, "Hold on, dude! Like that was like the freaking biggest hack in history,
Yeah.
dude." you know, and freaking I never once thought of it until that moment. I'm like, dude, I should be ashamed of myself. You know what I mean? Like, but what happened is this was in 1987, and a guy dressed up like um, Max Headroom hijacked um, the television station, or actually it was two stations in Chicago. The first attempt was with WGN, which apparently the people involved with it had a problem with. Um, so they had some kind of vendetta with them, and they got on there and they started their hack on taking over the actual freaking network while I was in the middle of broadcast, and it lasted for about 15 seconds until the station caught on to the fact that they had done it, so they shut them down. So what they ended up doing, that they ended up freaking, well, they didn't have their entire broadcast done. So that's what they suspect. They said, well, these guys freaking really wanted to get it out, so they went to their competitor news channel station and hacked them to finish the freaking broadcast. Okay, so that's the big one. Now that takes me back to freaking what I was talking about with this shit just being a setup, like with what's his name, Cooper, DB Cooper. You know what I mean? To this day, they have never busted the people who were involved in that incident whatsoever.
Mm.
They've got no leads on it. It's still a mystery that they've never been able to solve. They've had theories on it, but they don't know.
Yeah. What's this about LJ Cossey? Yeah, Cossey. That's related to this because
Well,
just looking through the Wikipedia page and there's an entry called "Death of LJ Cossey."
what does that mean, though? You know what I'm saying? I mean, think about that. What does that mean? I mean, that's the crazy part about it is, the second incident I found out it was during the later on during the day. They did it in the same day. It was WTTW's broadcast of Doctor Who during Doctor Who. That's when they did it. I think that was probably the most really wretched part about it. Like, Max Headroom freaking butting in on Doctor Who as he was saving the universe. I know. Now, I mean, you being English, that should just piss you off, dude.
Who was Doctor Who back in '87?
What?
What's the name of Doctor Who back in '87?
That was the blonde one.
That make me 11.
Yeah, that would have been the blonde one. He would have been the later one. So
okay.
Now the thing about this is like they got on there, okay, and the guy was imitating Max Headroom, who at the time was like really big on Coke commercials. So he made it look like on the video it was a Coke commercial, and then he goes to freaking showing his butt, his bare butt, and then out of the sight a woman takes freaking fly swatter and starts swatting his butt with the fly swatter, like, yelling, "They're coming to get me!"